Welcome to the Chrisman Commentary, Daily Mortgage News Podcast. I'm your host, Robbie Chrisman. Topics on today's episode include the love story between Donald and Jerome, my interview with Optimal Blue's Jeff McCarty on the growing importance of integrated data-driven tools and secondary marketing, and it's Payrolls Friday.
Do you know that Figure is shaking up the lending world with their 5-day HELOC, offering borrower approvals in as little as 5 minutes and funding in 5 days? Figure has hundreds of partners in the banking, credit union, home improvement, and, of course, IMB space, embedding their technology. Lenders give your borrowers an experience they will rave about, and you can learn more at figure.com.
Tomorrow is the 4th of July, and we find ourselves in the traditional dog days of summer, which refer to the hottest and most uncomfortable days, typically occurring from July 3rd to August 11th in the Northern Hemisphere. Did someone say dog? I guess I said dog. There's a story on our website about how inflation shows up in the price of hot dogs at the yearly Coney Island display of gluttony, the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. While President Trump continues to publicly berate Fed Chair Powell, but can't fire him, it is important for lenders to remember that though the economic data is all backward-looking, the economy is currently too strong to justify Fed rate cuts given the inflation risk, or at least the volatility of tariff decisions. So we sit. Besides, the bond market will move before the Fed. My dad and I were in the audience when John Williams, president of the New York Federal Reserve, spoke about fiscal policy, trade policy, geopolitical events, and more at the secondary in New York. The spoiler alert that I'll tell you is that rates are right where they need to be. Inflation is creeping down and the effects of tariffs remain to be seen, Mr. Williams said that some of the forward surveys are concerning, though. Business surveys, especially those impacted by trade, have been all over the map, and many aren't in the hard data yet, surprisingly. Recall that imports during the first quarter jumped, not because the economy was doing well, but because of front-loading as large retailers purchased items in advance and or used bonded warehouses for handling goods. Consumer spending is a huge question. All of the surveys are showing more uncertainty with greater thoughts about downsizing. Nationwide, that sometimes translates into action. Mr. Williams reminded the audience that the amount of data that the Fed has at its disposal is amazing. Shrinking the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, reducing its holdings of MBS by over $2 trillion, and doing so in a predictable, well-telegraphed manner, which the markets can digest, is something the Fed is doing. Its MBS portfolio is falling by $15 to $20 billion a month, and letting things roll off for the foreseeable future is entirely expected. The U.S. housing market is still impacted by supply and demand factors. Supply is a multi-decade problem, regardless of segment, although affordability is the current problem most often discussed. The Fed is seeking stakeholders at the community level coming together to help address affordability problems, which in turn is caused by high demand. Pragmatic solutions are not easy to find. The Federal Reserve doesn't set housing policy, and jobs and inflation are the overriding areas of focus of the Fed. So, turning to the day-to-day bond market activity, yields rose across a steepening Treasury curve yesterday despite a surprisingly weak ADP employment report, which stands for automatic data processing. The report showed a 33,000 job loss in June private sector payrolls, well below expectations for a 98,000 gain. The lack of market movement suggests that investors are holding off on major conclusions until today's more comprehensive employment situation report. More on that in a second. Although there's little doubt that the bill won't pass, attention yesterday also turned to the stalled One Big Beautiful Bill. One Big Beautiful Bill in the House amid GOP concerns. Do you like my voice? I do. Meanwhile, President Trump announced a new trade agreement with Vietnam featuring a 20% tariff on Vietnamese imports and zero tariff U.S. access to Vietnamese markets. The labor market slowdown, particularly in the services sector, has raised concerns about broader economic weakness ahead of the July 9th tariff deadline. Recent commentary from Federal Reserve officials suggests that tariff-related inflation has thus far been milder than initially feared, with little evidence of significant price pressures materializing so far. This, combined with Fed Chair Powell's softer tone during public remarks made earlier this week, has led markets to interpret the Fed's stance as increasingly flexible. especially after Powell refrained from directly opposing the idea of a July rate cut. Given recent market behavior, only a significantly weak jobs number, probably below 50,000, would meaningfully shift sentiment toward a July rate cut, especially with a 23% chance of that move already priced in. And one soft payrolls print alone isn't likely to prompt Fed action. It would take a benign June CPI as well to push policymakers toward easing this month. Keep in mind that the timing of both reports allows room for the Fed to adjust messaging if needed. For today's interview, I wanted to welcome to the show Optimal Blue's Jeff McCarty to talk about the growing importance of integrated, data-driven tools and secondary marketing to improve precision pricing, risk management, and efficiency, particularly as market volatility, product diversity, and AI adoption reshape the hedging and trading landscape. He's VP of Hedging and Trading Product at Optimal Blue, which sounds pretty self-explanatory, but let me ask him about it for our first question here.
I love your title. Maybe that's where I'll start. VP of Hedging and Trading Products, and it's exciting. I know I got a demo of Compass Edge a little while back, and I left that thinking, holy smokes, this is really slick. But I want to go broad level to start the interview, and I'll ask you kind of where we are in the secondary marketing technological space. Just how granular, transparent, efficient, seamless, whatever buzzwords you want to use and throw out there. Where are we right now as an industry? Or I guess what do your clients expect, or kind of what is pushing the envelope and the space forward? Like what's the latest and greatest when it comes to technology out there, secondary marketing?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is they expect it all. And you know, I certainly think we're getting to a place where we can provide it all. You know, I think one of the themes we constantly see is that whatever size client or whatever way you're doing business, you're all running into the same issues. So whether you're someone doing 10 million a month or you're a top 10 originator doing several billion a month or a GSE, you know, you're trying to solve the same issues. You're trying to figure out, how do I price and buy loans as effectively as possible? How do I maintain my profit margin? So how do I hedge loans, or you know, other ways I'm maintaining my profit margin? And then how do I sell my loans as effectively as possible? And again, you know, the tools you need, whether you're that small originator, whether you're a community bank, or you have retail, wholesale, correspondent divisions, and you're doing several billion a month, you need the same types of tools to do that. So you need accuracy, and you need tools that you can deploy efficiently, and you need a feedback loop for all those things, which usually revolves around data. You need to aggregate all that data so you have a feedback loop to go back and iterate on those processes and do those more efficiently as you go.
Can we talk about strategies out there right now in 2025 amongst your clients? Obviously, we've seen a ton of volatility. Maybe here more recently, people have started to become a little more calloused toward volatility. There's a period where U.S. Treasuries were acting much more like a developing nation's asset than the bedrock of the global financial system. That's kind of corrected itself, but there's still tariff uncertainty. There's uncertainty about the next Fed chair and when that person will assume the role, and that's kind of to weaken the U.S. dollar here recently. There's a lot going on. I mean, I write about it every day, and it seems like I used to get away with writing a two-paragraph capital markets section for the commentary. Now it's 3 or 4 or 5. There's just so much going on. How are you advising clients about how to maintain their proper hedge ratios, lock in profitability, those sorts of kind of capital markets tenets that have been around for a while?
Well, first and foremost, it's stay neutral, right? Don't take a position. Don't guess at which way the market's going to go, because there is so much volatility, and the market is getting pulled in so many different directions. So obviously we have the current administration pushing the Fed to lower interest rates. We've got this pressure for downward interest rates, but we have so many other factors out there that are potentially pushing up interest rates. Global instability, as you said, people discounting, U.S. Treasuries currently and U.S. assets. Is that driving up interest rates? And so we do have all these dynamics, and it feels like we're just teetering on the edge, but I don't know which, nobody knows which edge, we're kind of falling towards. While we have seen some volatility, we've stayed in a pretty stable range of mortgage rates. If you look at the OBMI over the past several months, we've just been in the high sixes and haven't really fallen out of that range in a while. And so we're kind of waiting for that other shoe to drop, in which direction we don't know. Hopefully, certainly for our industry, hopefully we will see, rates decrease and volumes increase. But we've, even in these higher interest rates, people have been making do enough, right? Volumes are okay. They're holding in there. It's really, I'm just going to reiterate, there is so much uncertainty out there right now. We're kind of waiting for that other shoe to drop. And so you ask what tools there, what things we should be thinking about. It is stay neutral, stay the course, make sure you have plenty of outlets. Don't take any unnecessary risks. So make sure you have plenty of outlets for all of your loan sales. Make sure you're not taking on too many higher interest rates in your pipeline, or if you are, think about, offloading that risk to somebody else, so you're not getting stuck with any type of products you don't want to get stuck with that may disappear quickly. Those types of things. Really the fundamentals that we preach every day.
That's no fun. How about this? When you go to Vegas, are you a red guy or a black guy or
Nope, I'm not that guy. I'm the opposite. I hopefully that means I'm the guy you want building your hedging platform, because I am not the Vegas guy. I don't have a good time honestly in Vegas at the table. So
You're killing me, man. Anyways, like I say, yeah, when it comes to hedging and trading products, yeah, how would you explain kind of your day to day? What's a day in the life of Jeff McCarty at Optimal? But obviously, one day it probably varies wildly throughout the week. But generally speaking, how would you explain your roles and responsibilities?
It starts with taking feedback from our clients, from our internal traders and our clients, and figuring out what problems they are running into today. So it's, recently it's talked about ARMs and non-QM, and thinking about, are those volumes going to increase? And we look at our data to see if those volumes are actually increasing. And then we think about ways where we can help clients hedge those, sell those as efficiently as possible. Taking that feedback, coming up with the requirements to say, how do we build tools for our clients that do those as effectively as possible? And then we take that to our development teams and we actually build those. And we do that in a very robust manner, leveraging the tools we already have. At Optimal Blue, we have some really great foundational tools, both from a technology perspective in terms of our backend technologies, but then just the tools we've built up over the years, where we can, we can price loans as accurately as anybody in the industry. And that follows through all the way from your front end pricing through your hedging and trading platform. So taking all those tools and advantages we already have and building our next level tools on top of that.
Yeah, like I said at the start of the interview, it was pretty slick when I saw the latest Compass Edge demo. Obviously the talk of the industry, at least for the last year and a half or 2 years now, is AI, and you have those assistants for sure. Can you talk generally speaking how you see AI assistants helping out in the capital markets to influence neutrality, maybe since that's today's interview?
No. That's perfect. There's so many opportunities in our space because we deal with so many large data sets. When you're looking at a hedge pipeline, you're looking at hundreds, thousands of loans, hundreds of trades, and then within each of those individual loans or trades, you're talking about hundreds of data points within those as well. And so, a seasoned capital markets professional has gotten really, really good at relying on their intuition. Maybe they have spreadsheets. Maybe they, do some back of the napkin math, as I like to call it, to come up with decisions about what is my lock volume going to look like for the next 4 hours. What instruments are liquid? So where do I want to? How do I want to hedge my pipeline? They've gotten pretty good about that. But we've taken AI and a lot of these tools, new tools that are coming out to distill all those really complex data sets into very simplified solutions so that those answers are at your fingertips and you're no longer relying as much on intuition or this back of the napkin approach. You've got these foundational tools behind you to help make those decisions for you. These tools are simplifying complex processes. They adapt quickly to market changes. And ultimately, you're making just smarter, faster decisions on top of it with these tools.
Yeah, the tools are so powerful, but important, and I think overlooked more than it should be piece is that if you're not feeding in good data, the tools aren't going to be able to help you like they should. And obviously, Optimal Blue has a massive repository of data. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here a little bit. Maybe you can preach back to me, and we'll both nod our heads in unison. But can you explain the importance of data in today's modern, fast-paced environment, especially when we're relying on technology to spit out a lot of outcomes for us?
Oh yeah, it's a really great point because you run the risk with some of these AI tools of it becoming very black box. And certainly anybody that's played around with ChatGPT has seen this, right? And so we have to be very careful about the data that goes into this. So this isn't just a generic ChatGPT tool that we've thrown on top of all of our hedging and trading products, right? We think very closely about that data that's going into it, and there's a lot of data translation that happens as soon as it does go into it. And so things like categorizing how did my P&L change day over day, right? So that's a bit one of our big assistants. That's what we've come up with, and it's we've been very critical about how we do categorize that and provide that information back to you. So we categorize that into renegotiations or cross hedge. All those things happen ahead of time, and we've organized the data ahead of time that goes into those models. You don't want to just say it's AI for AI's sake. You have to be very critical about what goes into the model.
Yeah. Well, I want to extrapolate that into what we're seeing right now. And I'll ask you, are there trends out there you think are pretty notable that you're keeping an eye on? Or what are your clients' concerns or chatter? What kind of can you bring us in on some trader talk? What's been going on recently?
As pricing gets more granular and as we open up different types of products, I mentioned ARMs and non-QM earlier, as clients get into different types of products, builder forward programs, these aren't always things that you can rely on just a straight one-to-one hedge with TBAs, right? TBAs have been the instrument, and it's been a pretty straightforward hedge traditionally to hedge a fixed rate agency pipeline with TBAs. And so, we have to constantly be critical about how we're looking at that. So whether you're hedging, builder forwards with things like mortgage rate futures, or you want to get more granular in your durations with specified pay-up durations because so many investors are passing through specified pay-ups into their pricing. You want to be able to hedge that. So we're constantly looking at our hedge model to get more efficient at things like that. And then, again, as I mentioned, ARMs and non-QM, those aren't going to be solved with necessarily with TBAs, or at least it's not going to be a one-to-one hedge. So it's really, as we open up kind of the box outside of just like a straight fixed rate agency product, how do we start thinking about getting more granular or getting outside of some of those generic products? That's really been a common theme over the past couple of months. It was a hot topic in New York at the secondary conference and continues to be a hot topic. And again, as I mentioned, we're looking closely at the data that's coming in to the PPE. We see 40% of the market, so we have a good view as those different types of products do expand, and we're seeing a little bit of a pickup. It does feel like people are trying to get ahead of it, that they're trying to be prepared if and when those products pick up even more steam.
Then moving forward, and maybe this is unfair to ask because it seems like we're so busy these days. But looking forward, how do you see the demands of clients or the capital market space continuing to evolve? We are already so granular, transparent, efficient, those sorts of things already. How do you see it moving forward from here? What's it look like in a couple years?
More and more connecting your front end strategies with your back end strategies. I think that, luckily for us, that's one of the, the advantage we have in the market is that we're the only end-to-end capital markets platform. But it makes a lot of sense of coming of how it comes into play. So, you want to make sure that how you're selling your loans on the back end matches up with how you're pricing the loans on the front end. It's kind of obvious, but there's no, traditionally there hadn't been as many tools as there probably should be out there to connect the dots all the way through the loan origination process. And as you're able to connect the dots through the loan origination process, so you're able to price your loans more granularly up front because you know you're going to how you're going to sell your loans more granularly on the back end. You can take advantages of portions of the market where maybe you traditionally weren't able to take advantage of. So you can, pick off more of those spec products up front. You can pass through more of that specified pay up pricing up front to your borrowers. You can get more efficient and profitable in your pricing strategies up front because you know how your hedging and your loan sale strategies are affected.
I certainly enjoyed speaking with you today. Obviously, next time we'll talk the proper strategy for hedging arms. We'll unveil the secrets that are out there. But for now, Jeff, I really appreciate it, man. I've talked to a lot of people at Optimal Blue, and I certainly enjoyed this interview as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Robbie.
With a holiday shortened week, key data including the trade deficit, jobless claims, which came in at 233,000, and the June payrolls report, which was up 147,000, stronger than expected, with the unemployment rate down to 4.1%, better than expected, were all released together this morning. Hourly earnings were up 0.2%. Most economists believed that an unemployment rate above 4.5% would justify a July cut, and we're a long way from there. So look for the Fed to potentially move in September. Later today brings S&P Global Services PMI, the ISM equivalent, May factory orders, Treasury announcing the auction sizes for next week's refunding supply, consisting of $58 billion of 3-year notes, $39 billion of 10-year notes, and $22 billion of reopened 30-year bonds. Freddie Mac's primary mortgage market survey, and remarks from Atlanta Fed President Bostic. Bond futures will settle at 1 p.m. Eastern and 2 p.m. Eastern for cash, per SIFMA's recommendation for an early closure, ahead of tomorrow's full closure for Independence Day. After the first volley of data, we begin the last day of this trading week with agency MBS prices worse by a quarter to a half, depending on coupon and maturity, from Wednesday's close. The 2-year yielding 3.90, and the 10-year yielding 4.35 after closing yesterday at 4.29%. As a quick note, there's no podcast tomorrow in honor of the 4th of July holiday. Let's wrap up with a joke and some housekeeping. What's the best drink to have on the 4th of July? A White Russian. Nothing's more American than a Russian helping you to make poor choices. I thought a better 4th of July joke would be like, what's red, white, and blue all over, or whatever. It's like a dead baby seal. No, a dead blue jay. A dead blue jay.
Thanks again to Figure, which is shaking up the lending world with their 5-day HELOC, offering borrower approvals in as little as 5 minutes and funding in 5 days. Figure has hundreds of partners in the banking, credit union, home improvement, and of course IMB space embedding their technology, giving borrowers an experience they'll rave about. Learn more at figure.com.